I destroyed my son's life savings in less than 12 hours, and I'm not sorry. Before you judge me, before you call me petty or vindictive, I need you to understand something. The cruelest thing a parent can do isn't withholding money, it's teaching their child that love has a price tag. My name is William, and on my 67th birthday, my own son looked me in the eye, pointed at a table full of food I couldn't touch, and said 5 words that broke something in me I didn't know could break. You didn't contribute, so don't eat. What he didn't know was that I'd been contributing since before he took his first breath. And by sunrise, he'd learn exactly what withdrawal feels like. You need to watch this because someone in your life, maybe your child, maybe your parent, maybe you, has started treating relationships like business transactions, and it's killing something sacred. Here's the pain you might be feeling. You've either been made to feel worthless because you're not producing enough, or you've caught yourself measuring someone's value by what they bring to the table. Maybe you're exhausted from constantly proving you deserve basic dignity. Maybe you're confused about why your family feels like a cold negotiation rather than a warm home. The common advice says, set boundaries or practice gratitude or communicate better. But that misses the deeper disease. We've been infected by a transactional worldview that turns humans into resources and love into leverage. Here's the reframe. The moment you can price a relationship is the moment it dies. Not because money doesn't matter, it does, but because the things that make us human cannot survive being itemized. What you'll get from this video isn't a simple who's right, who's wrong judgment. You'll get a framework for recognizing when economics has poisoned intimacy, why humiliation sometimes wakes us up faster than kindness, and how to rebuild connection after it's been reduced to a transaction. This perspective stands apart because I'm not here to tell you I was right to empty my son's accounts. I'm here to show you what happens when two people finally stop pretending that love and money speak the same language, and what it costs to translate between them. If you've ever felt like you're constantly audited for your worthiness, or if you've caught yourself auditing someone else, the next hour might save you decades of cold dinners and colder hearts. Let me take you to the exact moment. It's Saturday afternoon, early May. My daughter-in-law has set up this beautiful spread in their backyard. You know the kind, the Pinterest-perfect situation with the string lights and the floral arrangements and the 3-tiered cake that probably cost more than my first car. Families gathering, grandkids are running around. I'm wearing the sweater my daughter bought me. Feeling good, feeling seen. 67 years on this earth, and I'm surrounded by the people I made, the legacy I built. The food comes out, it's catered. My son made a point of mentioning that. We got the good stuff, Dad. Top shelf everything. Everyone starts serving themselves. I reach for a plate, and my son, my firstborn, the kid I worked 2 jobs to put through college, he puts his hand on my wrist. Gentle but firm. The way you'd stop a stranger from taking something that doesn't belong to them. Dad, he says, and his voice is quiet, but the whole table hears it. Did you contribute to this? I thought he was joking. I actually laughed. Contribute? It's my birthday, son. Right, but we paid for all this. The food, the venue set up, everything. You didn't put any money in. The table goes silent. My daughter is staring at her plate. My other son looks uncomfortable but says nothing. I didn't know there was a fee to attend my own birthday, I say, still trying to make it light, but something in my chest is starting to tighten. It's not a fee, Dad, it's just fairness. Everyone here contributed except you. You don't work anymore, you're on Social Security. We're carrying the financial weight of this family now, and it doesn't seem right that you get to enjoy the benefits without participating. He removes my hand from the plate. You didn't contribute, so you don't eat. I want you to understand something. It wasn't the hunger that hurt. I could have left, driven through McDonald's, had a burger in my car. It was the 38 people watching me be categorized as unworthy. It was my granddaughter, she's 6, looking confused and asking her mum, "Why can't Grandpa eat?" It was the sudden, crushing realization that my son had been keeping score for years, and I'd just learned I was losing. I stood up. I didn't make a scene. I walked to my car, drove home, and sat in my kitchen with every light off, staring at my phone. And I asked myself one question. What did I teach him that made this make sense to him? That night, I couldn't sleep. I did something I hadn't done in probably 15 years. I went to my filing cabinet and pulled out the folder I'd labeled Family Investments. I'm a simple man, but I've always kept records, not because I was planning to hold anything over anyone's head, but because I wanted to know what I'd built, what I'd provided. I started going through it. 1991, $18,000 for my son's first year of college. I was making $31,000 a year. I have the tax return stapled to the tuition receipt. 1993, $4,200 to fix his car after he totaled it driving drunk. I told him it was a loan. He never paid it back. I never mentioned it. 1998, $25,000 for the down payment on his first house. Called it an early inheritance so he wouldn't feel indebted. 2003, $12,000 when his business idea failed and he couldn't make rent. Wired it the same day he called. 2007, $50,000 when the market crashed and his investments tanked. I liquidated part of my retirement. 2015, $30,000 for my grandson's private school tuition when my son was between jobs. 2019, $15,000 when his wife had medical bills from a surgery. I'm sitting there at 2 a.m, surrounded by receipts that span 30 years, and the total comes to just over $180,000, not counting the informal stuff, the groceries I'd buy when I visited, the toys for the grandkids, the dinners out where I'd grab the check because, hell, I'm the dad. But here's the thing that broke me. I wasn't angry about the money. I was angry that I'd apparently raised a man who thought that list mattered, who looked at his father and saw a balance sheet instead of a human being. And the truly terrible part, I started wondering if he was right, if maybe I hadn't contributed lately, if maybe being old, being retired, being in the way meant I actually didn't deserve that plate of food. For about an hour, I believed him. Then the sun came up, and I realized something. He didn't need his bank account emptied as punishment. He needed it emptied as education. He'd forgotten what it felt like to have nothing, to depend on someone's grace instead of someone's transaction. I called my financial advisor at 7 a.m. By 10, every account I'd set up for him, every trust I'd funded, every rainy day safety net I'd built, all of it liquidated and transferred back to my name. $340,000. Turns out I'd been contributing a lot more than I remembered. The missed calls started around 11. Before I tell you what happened, when he finally reached me, I need you to understand why this wasn't about revenge. Because if you think this is just a petty old man punishing his ungrateful kid, you'll miss the entire point of why love and money can't live in the same ledger. Let's talk about what we've actually been taught about worthiness and why it's poisoning us. We live in a world that has trained us to view everything through economic value, and I mean everything. Your worth at work is your productivity. Your worth at home is your contribution. Your worth as a person is increasingly tied to what you produce, provide, or pay for. This makes perfect sense in a market. It's disastrous in a family. Here's the truth they don't tell you. Human relationships require economic exchanges, but they cannot be reduced to them. You have to buy food, pay mortgages, fund educations. Money flows through families like blood through a body. But the moment you start believing the money is the relationship, that the flow of resources equals the flow of love, you've contracted what I call the transactional virus. My son was infected. Maybe I infected him. The symptoms are subtle at first. You start noticing who paid for dinner. You start keeping informal score of who's putting in more effort, more money, more time. You start feeling resentful when the ledger doesn't balance. Then it progresses. You begin to categorize people by their utility. Your aging parent becomes a financial liability. Your struggling sibling becomes a drain. Your child becomes an investment you expect returns on. Final stage, you deny someone basic dignity, food, respect, belonging, because they haven't earned it by your economic metrics. My son reached stage 3 on my birthday. And here's the terrible paradox. He learned this from a culture that I participated in building. Every time I emphasized earning your keep, every time I praised productivity over presence, every time I showed love through provision rather than through witness, I was teaching the virus. The cure isn't to stop caring about money. The cure is to remember that money is a tool for expressing care, not a substitute for it. You cannot price a human being. The moment you try, you lose them. Think about it this way. Imagine if every time your mother hugged you as a child, she handed you an invoice, 3 minutes of physical affection, market rate for maternal care, payable within 30 days. You'd think she was insane, right? Because hugs aren't economic transactions. They're expressions of connection that exist outside the market. But somehow, we've let market logic creep into everything else. We've started invoicing each other emotionally. You gave me advice, so I owe you a favor. You helped me move, so I have to help you move. You're struggling financially, so you're less valuable to have around. It's subtle, it's insidious, and it's everywhere. My son didn't wake up one day and decide to be cruel. He woke up in a world that had been teaching him his entire life that value is economic, that contribution is measurable, that people who don't produce don't deserve. And I was part of that world. I worked in it, benefited from it, never questioned it enough. So when he turned that logic on me, he was just being a good student. Let's talk about why I'm sharing the most humiliating moment of my life with thousands of strangers on the internet. Public humiliation does something unique. It forces you to choose between two paths. You either collapse into shame and let it define you, or you metabolize it into clarity and let it transform you. Standing at that table, unable to eat at my own birthday while my family watched my son reduce me to my economic output, that should have destroyed me. I'm 67. I'm supposed to have my dignity intact by now, but humiliation is a diagnostic tool. It reveals what you actually believe about yourself versus what you thought you believed. I thought I believed my worth was inherent, that my decades of fatherhood had earned me basic respect. Turns out, I half believed what my son made explicit, that I was only valuable when I was producing. The shame I felt wasn't just about him. It was about me finally seeing my own internalized transactionalism. Here's the counterintuitive part. Sometimes the people who humiliate us are holding up mirrors we need to see. My son was cruel. He was also showing me the logical conclusion of a system I'd participated in. A system where old people, disabled people, poor people, anyone not contributing gets slowly edged out of the feast. If I hadn't been humiliated, I might have just felt hurt. Because I was humiliated publicly, I was forced to ask, what world am I living in where this makes sense to anyone? What did I do to build that world? Humiliation, when you survive it, becomes rocket fuel for change. I don't recommend it, but I won't waste it. I want you to think about a time you were humiliated, not just embarrassed, actually humiliated, made to feel fundamentally unworthy in front of people whose opinions mattered. What did that moment reveal about what you believed about yourself? What did it show you about the systems you were living in? Most of us try to forget those moments, bury them, pretend they didn't happen. But they're gold mines if you're willing to dig. They show you the gap between who you think you are and who the world treats you as. And in that gap, you can either collapse or build something new. I chose to build, but first I had to destroy. Here's the biggest lie we've been sold. that love is something you earn through performance. You earn a paycheck, you earn a degree, you earn a promotion. You don't earn love, you receive it or you don't. You give it or you don't. The moment earning enters the equation, it's not love anymore, it's employment. My son didn't love me less at that birthday party, but he'd categorized me into a role, the non-contributing family member. And roles have performance requirements. I'd failed mine by being old, by being retired, by not writing a check for the catering. This is what happens when we import market logic into intimate spaces. We start treating our children like employees who need to justify their existence, and we start treating our parents like investments that should yield returns. We start treating our partners like service providers who can be fired for underperformance. And everyone is exhausted, everyone is anxious, because you cannot rest when love is conditional on productivity. Here's what I wish I'd taught my son. Your worth is not your output. Your humanity is not your utility. You are valuable because you exist, not because you produce. You deserve food because you're hungry, not because you paid for it. You deserve dignity because you're human, not because you're currently useful. This isn't hippie nonsense. This is the foundation of functional family, of functional community. The alternative is what I experienced, a world where the moment you slow down, the moment you age, the moment you can't contribute economically, you get pushed away from the table. My son thought he was teaching me accountability. What he was actually doing was practicing for my funeral, where he'd already decided I didn't belong at the center anymore. I took his money not to hurt him, but to interrupt that practice, to show him what it feels like to suddenly be worthless by metrics you didn't choose. Let me give you another way to think about this. Imagine two gardens. In the first garden, every plant has to justify its existence. The tomatoes better produce tomatoes. The flowers better be beautiful. The trees better provide shade. If any plant stops performing, it gets pulled out. Resources are allocated based on productivity. It's efficient. It's fair. It's also dead within a season because gardens are ecosystems, not factories. The plants that aren't producing visible fruit might be fixing nitrogen in the soil. The dying tree might be housing beneficial insects. The ugly flower might be the one the bees need most. In the second garden, there's abundance. Plants are tended because they're part of the system. Some produce a lot, some produce a little. Some are just there being beautiful or strange or weird. The gardener doesn't pull things out for underperformance. The gardener nurtures the whole ecosystem, trusting that health is more than visible productivity. Which garden do you want to live in? Which garden do you want your family to be? My son was running a Garden 1 family. I was trying to show him we needed to be Garden 2, not because Garden 1 doesn't work. It does in a factory. But families aren't factories, they're ecosystems. And ecosystems die when you start measuring every element by its economic output. There's a different kind of math that families used to run on. I call it the mathematics of grace. In transactional math, everything balances. You give what you get. Debts are tracked and paid. It's fair, it's clean, it makes sense. In the mathematics of grace, nothing balances, and that's the point. Your parents give you life, childhood, education, safety. You can never repay that. It's not a debt. It's a gift. You give your children the same. They won't repay you. They'll give it to their children. The math doesn't close on individual relationships. It flows forward. Generationally, you receive abundance you didn't earn, and you give abundance you won't be repaid for. This is how humanity survived for millennia, not through fair transactions, but through overwhelming, imbalanced, irrational generosity from old to young, from strong to weak, from those who have to those who need. My son wanted transactional math. He wanted fairness, equity, clean ledgers, so I showed him what that actually looks like. I added up what I'd given, 180,000 documented, probably another 100,000 undocumented over 30 years. I added up what he'd given me. maybe 3,000 over the years in birthday gifts, Father's Day presents, the occasional dinner. By his math, he owed me $277,000. I didn't make him pay it. Instead, I took back the $340,000 I'd set aside for his future. Money he didn't know he was depending on, money that was just sitting there representing my continued, invisible contribution to his security. I took it back to show him, this is what the world looks like when we actually run the numbers. When we stop operating on grace and start operating on fairness. It's cold, it's brutal, nobody wins. The mathematics of grace is inefficient, imbalanced, and irrational. It's also the only math that lets families survive, because every single one of us will eventually be on the receiving end. Every one of us will age, will weaken, will need more than we can give. When that day comes, do you want to live in a world of transactions or a world of grace? My son is learning that answer right now with his empty accounts and his full voicemail. Let me tell you about the economics of aging, because this is where the transactional worldview becomes truly monstrous. When you're young, you're an investment. Parents put resources into you expecting that you'll become productive, successful, self-sufficient. When you're middle-aged, you're an asset. You're producing, providing, contributing. You're valuable by market metrics. But when you're old, you become a liability. You take more than you give. You need care, resources, patience, time. By transactional logic, you're a bad deal. And in a world run by transactional logic, bad deals get eliminated. We don't say it that openly, of course. We dress it up. We talk about nursing homes as if they're vacations. We talk about not being a burden as if it's virtuous to disappear when you stop being useful. We've built an entire infrastructure around warehousing old people so they don't inconvenience the productive members of society. And my son, standing at that birthday table, and was just practicing what he'd been taught, that people who don't contribute don't deserve resources. He didn't invent that, he absorbed it. From me, from the culture, from the relentless message that your value is your productivity. I'm 67, I've got maybe 20 years left if I'm lucky, and I had to decide, do I spend those years proving I'm still useful, still contributing, still earning my seat at the table, or do I interrupt the whole sick system and teach my son that there's another way to value a human life? I chose interruption. It cost me my savings strategy for him. It cost me our relationship for a while. But it might save his soul. And it might save my granddaughter from learning that grandpa's only valuable when he's writing checks. Here's your first practice, and it's uncomfortable. I want you to notice this week, every time you assess someone's value, including your own, based on what they're producing or providing, not to judge yourself, just to notice. When your aging parent is slow and you feel that flash of impatience, notice that underneath might be you're not useful anymore. When your kid isn't performing well in school and you feel anxiety, notice if part of that is you're not producing the results I need. When you're exhausted and feel guilty for resting, notice the voice that says, you haven't earned this break. Just notice. Write it down if you can. The pattern will reveal itself, how often you're running transactional math on relationships that should be running on grace. You can't change what you can't see. This practice makes it visible. I started doing this after the birthday incident, and it was horrifying how often I caught myself doing it. I'd visit my daughter and she'd be having a hard day, house messy, kids chaotic, and I'd feel this little spike of judgment, like, what are you doing all day if the house looks like this? I was measuring her, auditing her productivity, calculating whether she was earning her keep as a stay-at-home mum. Once I started noticing it, I couldn't stop seeing it. I did it to everyone. The grocery store clerk who was slow, you're not earning your paycheck. The friend who cancelled plans, you're not contributing to this friendship. Myself, when I spent an afternoon reading instead of being productive, you're wasting time. You're not earning your existence. It's exhausting, and it's everywhere. So just notice it. That's step one. You can't dismantle what you can't see. Second practice. Expand your definition of contribution. My son defined contribution as financial input. By that measure, I contributed nothing to the birthday, but I contributed my presence, my history. The fact that my existence is the reason there's a birthday to celebrate. This week, when someone in your life isn't contributing in obvious ways, ask, what are they contributing that I'm not counting? The elderly parent who can't work anymore, maybe they're contributing wisdom, perspective, a living link to your history. The struggling friend who can't pay their half, maybe they're contributing vulnerability, which is the foundation of real intimacy. The child who's failing classes, maybe they're contributing honest struggle, which teaches the family how to support rather than just perform. You yourself. When you're depleted, maybe you're contributing the truth that humans aren't machines, which everyone around you needs permission to remember. Write down 3 non-economic contributions you've received this week. Then write down 3 you've given. You're training yourself to see a fuller picture of value. I'll give you an example from my own life. After I took the money back from my son, I felt terrible. Like maybe I was the monster in this story. So I did this exercise. What had I contributed to my family in the last month that wasn't financial? I'd listened to my daughter talk about her marriage troubles for 2 hours on the phone. I'd taught my grandson how to tie his shoes. I'd shared stories about his great-grandfather that nobody else alive remembers. I'd been present at a family dinner and made people laugh. I'd existed as a connection point between generations, a walking history, a source of continuity. None of that showed up on a balance sheet, but all of it mattered. And when I expanded my definition of contribution, I stopped feeling like a leech for being old and started feeling like a human participating in family the way humans have for thousands of years. Try it. You'll be surprised what you find. Third practice, and this one's active. Give something with absolutely no expectation of return. I don't mean a charitable donation, that's too distant. I mean within your actual relationships. Give money, if you can, to someone who won't pay it back. Give time to someone who can't reciprocate. Give attention to someone who has nothing to offer you. And here's the key. Notice what comes up. Do you feel virtuous, resentful, anxious that you're being taken advantage of? Do you start keeping score even as you're trying not to? That feeling, that discomfort with imbalanced giving, that's the transactional virus making itself known. The cure is exposure therapy. You practice grace until it stops feeling like you're losing something and starts feeling like you're participating in the ancient human economy that actually works. Start small. One act of non-reciprocal generosity this week. Watch what it teaches you about who you've become. I did this practice by calling my son before he called me, before the panic set in, before the missed calls. I left him a voicemail saying, I took the money back. Not as punishment, as education. Come to breakfast tomorrow and I'll explain. No demands, no conditions, just an invitation. He didn't have to come. He didn't owe me anything. I was giving him the chance to understand without requiring that he take it. And it was hard. Part of me wanted to make him beg, wanted to punish him longer, wanted him to earn back my love through sufficient groveling. But that would have just been more transactional thinking. So I practiced grace. I gave the invitation freely. And I had to sit with the discomfort of not knowing if he'd accept it. That discomfort is where you grow. So I've told you what happened at the table. I've told you what I did with his bank accounts. I've shown you the disease we're all carrying. But I haven't told you what happened when he finally reached me. When he showed up at my door, panicked and angry and confused. I haven't told you what I said that made him cry for the first time since he was 11 this year. And I haven't told you whether we survived this, whether the empty accounts led to an empty relationship, or whether something new grew in that burned ground. He called 19 times before I answered. I let it ring. Not to punish him, though I won't lie, there was some satisfaction in it, but because I needed to know what I was going to say. You get one chance to say the thing that either breaks a relationship forever or cracks it open to something new. When I finally picked up, he was already talking. Dad, what the hell did you do? My accounts, everything's gone. The college fund for the kids, the investment account, the savings. Dad, that's our security. That was my security, I said, that I gave to you. And you just taught me that giving doesn't matter. Only current contribution matters. So I stopped contributing.
Silence. I could hear him breathing. This is insane. You're punishing me for... What? For being honest? For pointing out that you didn't pay for your own birthday party? No, I said, and my voice was steady in a way I didn't expect. I'm teaching you what you taught me, that people are worth what they provide. You provided nothing when you came into this world. You were a mouth to feed, a body to clothe, a need that never stopped needing, and I provided. Not because you earned it, because you existed, because you were mine. That's different. I was a child and I'm old. Well, what's the functional difference? We're both at stages of life where we take more than we give economically. You decided that makes me unworthy of eating. I decided that means you're ready to learn what you've been taking for granted. He started to argue, then stopped. I heard something in his breathing change. Dad, I didn't mean... Yes, you did. You meant it. That's what scares me. You looked at your father and saw a deficit. And I have to know, did I teach you that? Is this my fault? And then my son, my grown, successful, cold son, he broke. I don't know how to do this, he said, and his voice was suddenly young. I don't know how to be the one carrying everything. The mortgage, the kids' school, mum's care. I just wanted someone to help. And you're just there, not helping, just taking up space and resources. And I'm so tired, Dad. I'm so tired. And there it was, under the cruelty, under the transactional coldness, terror, the terror of being the one responsible for everyone with no one responsible for him. So you pushed me out of the boat to make it lighter, I said. I'm sorry, but
He was crying now. I'm so sorry. Come to my house tomorrow morning, I told him. 7 in the morning, we're going to rebuild something, but not the bank account. That's gone until you understand why it was never yours to begin with. He showed up at 6:45. I'd already made breakfast. Eggs, toast, bacon, coffee, the full thing. He sat down and I could see he was bracing for a lecture, for punishment. Instead, I put a plate in front of him. He stared at it. I can't pay you for this, I know. So why are you feeding me? Because you're hungry. Because you're my son. Because this is what tables are for. He didn't touch the food for a long time, just sat there, looking at it like it was a trap. Finally, he said, I don't understand what you want from me. I want you to eat. Without calculating whether you deserve it. Without tallying what it costs me. I want you to receive something you didn't earn, and I want you to notice how that feels. He picked up the fork, put it down, picked it up again. This feels, I don't know, wrong? It feels wrong because you've forgotten how to receive grace. You've been performing for worthiness for so long that basic human care feels like a transaction you're losing. He took a bite, then another, and then he was eating. And I was watching my son remember what it feels like to be fed without having to earn it. When he finished, he looked up. The birthday thing, I was so focused on fairness, on who was pulling their weight, that you forgot I'm not your employee. I'm your father. I made you stand there while everyone watched, while your granddaughter watched. Yes, that's unforgivable, maybe. But I'm feeding you anyway. That's what I'm trying to show you. The math doesn't work. I should withhold this breakfast because you withheld my birthday dinner. That would be fair. But fairness makes us both hungry. He was quiet for a long time. Then, the money. The accounts. I built my whole life around that safety net. I didn't even know how much I was depending on it until it was gone. That's the second lesson, I said. You've been standing on a platform I built, calling it the ground, acting like you're self-made, like you don't need anyone because you're financially independent. But your independence was funded by my dependence on you needing me. The whole system was already broken. I just made it visible. So what now? Do I just, give up on fairness? Let everyone take advantage of me? No. You learn to tell the difference between a market and a family. In a market, you trade equal value. In a family, you give wildly unequal amounts at different times, trusting that over a lifetime, over generations, it somehow balances in ways you can't track. Your grandmother fed me when I was broke. I fed you when you were young. You'll feed your kids when they're struggling. Maybe they'll feed me when I'm dying. The balance isn't transactional, it's tidal. It flows, and you have to trust the flow. He sat with that. Then, how do I fix this? With you, with the family. You start by understanding that you can't. Some things, once broken, don't go back to how they were. But they might become something new, something better, if you're willing to build it without a calculator in your hand. I poured him more coffee. He didn't ask if he deserved it, he just received it. That's when I knew we might make it. Let me tell you about the framework that saved my relationship with my son and might save yours with whoever you're keeping score with. There are two economies and you have to know which one you're in. Economy one is the market. This is where you trade value for value. You work, you get paid, you buy something, you pay for it. Everyone tries to get fair exchange. It's not evil, it's necessary. It's how we organize resource distribution among strangers and acquaintances. The rules are explicit contracts, enforced fairness, equal exchange, self-interest is assumed and expected. Economy 2 is the gift economy. This is where you give without measuring, receive without earning, and trust that abundance flows in patterns bigger than individual transactions. This is family, friendship, community, love. The rules are implicit trust, radical generosity, unequal exchange over time. Self-interest is dissolved into mutual care. The disaster happens when you confuse the two. When you bring market logic into gift spaces, you destroy intimacy. You turn your child into a cost-benefit analysis. You turn your parent into a liability. You turn your partner into a service provider. When you bring gift logic into market spaces, you get exploited. You give to your employer like their family and they lay you off anyway. You trust the corporation like it's your dad and it maximizes shareholder value at your expense. My son brought market logic to my birthday. I brought it back to his bank account to show him how it feels. Now we're both trying to rebuild in the gift economy, where he doesn't owe me for raising him, where I don't charge him for my presence, where we give what we can, when we can, and trust that it's enough. It's terrifying, because gift economy has no guarantees. You might give and never receive back, but it's the only economy where love can breathe. Think about the relationships in your life right now. Which economy are you running them in? Your marriage, is it a partnership of mutual gift giving, or are you tallying who does more dishes? Your friendship, is it a flow of support that goes back and forth unevenly, or are you keeping score of who paid for the last dinner? Your relationship with your kids, are you giving freely and trusting they'll pass it forward, or are you expecting repayment for your sacrifice? Most of us are running hybrid economies, gift in some areas, market in others. And that's where the confusion happens, where resentment builds, where relationships die. You have to get clear. You have to decide, is this person in my gift economy or my market economy? And once you decide, you have to stick to it. You can't give like it's a gift and then get resentful when they don't repay you. That's market thinking dressed up as generosity. You can't trade like it's a market and then expect unconditional love. That's gift thinking applied to a business relationship. Get clear, stay clear, let the economies stay separate. I want to talk about why my son thought like an accountant at my birthday party, because it's probably why you're keeping score too. There's a wound most of us carry, the scarcity wound. The belief that there's not enough money, not enough time, not enough energy, not enough care to go around. When you believe there's not enough, every act of giving feels like losing. Every person who takes without giving back feels like a threat to your survival. My son is financially comfortable, but he's scarcity wounded. He grew up watching me work myself to exhaustion. He internalized that resources are always on the verge of running out, that you have to guard them, account for them, make sure nobody takes more than they give. So when I showed up to his party without money, some part of him panicked. There's not enough. Dad's taking. The system will collapse. Never mind that I'd given him hundreds of thousands over the years. In that moment, he could only see the current transaction, and it looked like loss. Here's the truth. Scarcity thinking makes you cruel. Not because you're a bad person, but because you're terrified. When you believe there's not enough love, you withhold it from people who aren't earning it. When you believe there's not enough security, you hoard it and resent anyone who needs it. When you believe there's not enough dignity to go around, you rank people and push the lowest ones away from the table. My son's cruelty came from fear. And I inherited that fear from my father, who inherited it from his. Generational scarcity wound passed down like eye color. The healing isn't pretending resources are infinite. They're not. Money runs out, time runs out, energy depletes. The healing is recognizing that people are not resources. My worth doesn't deplete when I age. My son's worth doesn't increase with his bank account. We are not the economy. We move through it, but we are not it. When you can separate your humanity from your productivity, the scarcity panic loosens. Not completely. We still live in a world of real limits, but enough that you can feed your father at his birthday without calculating whether he's earned it. Here's a question for you. What scarcity are you most afraid of? Is it money, time, energy, love, attention? Whatever it is, that's probably where you're most transactional. That's where you're keeping the tightest score. That's where you need the most healing. For my son, it was financial scarcity. For me, it was relational scarcity, the fear that I wasn't loved for who I was, only for what I provided. We were both operating from scarcity, just in different currencies, and scarcity always leads to cruelty eventually. Because when you're terrified there's not enough, you start deciding who deserves what's left, and the people who aren't producing get cut first. So how do you rebuild after you've reduced someone to a transaction, after you've been reduced to one yourself? You can't just apologize and move on. The wound is structural. You have to rebuild the foundation. Here's the principle. Reconstruction requires vulnerability without performance. My son couldn't just say, "Sorry, I humiliated you," and have it be over, because his apology could still be transactional. "I'll give you this apology, you'll give me back the money, we're even." He had to show me vulnerability without knowing if it would get him anything. He had to sit at my table and receive food he didn't earn, and feel how uncomfortable that was and stay uncomfortable anyway. I couldn't just say, "I forgive you," and return the money, because that would teach him that emotional manipulation works. Just cry and dad folds. I had to show him that grace isn't earned through good behavior. It's given because I choose to give it. And that choice is mine, not his to control through performance. This is so hard because we're trained to perform our way out of shame. We apologize to get forgiveness. We're vulnerable to get comfort. We confess to get absolution. All transactions, real reconstruction happens when you're vulnerable and might not get anything back, when you apologize and they might not forgive you, when you offer grace and they might not receive it. My son came to breakfast, not knowing if I'd feed him, or lecture him, or throw him out. I made breakfast not knowing if he'd understand or just resent me more. We both showed up without guarantees. That's where the new thing grows, in the uncertainty, in the space where nobody's performing for a predetermined outcome. It's messy, it doesn't have steps, but it's real. And real is the only thing that survives. Let me give you a concrete example of what this looked like in practice. About a week after the breakfast, my son called me. He said, "I want to try something. I want to come over every Sunday morning and just be with you. Not do anything productive, not fix anything. Just sit and drink coffee and talk or not talk. No agenda. I want to practice being with you without performing. And I want you to practice receiving my presence without requiring that I solve anything or provide anything. Can we try that? We've been doing it for 3 months now. Some Sundays we talk for hours. Some Sundays we sit in silence. Some Sundays he tells me about his fears and his failures and I don't try to fix them. Some Sundays I tell him stories about his childhood and he doesn't deflect or minimize. It's not productive, it's not efficient, it doesn't produce anything measurable. And it's rebuilding us in ways the money never did. That's reconstruction. That's what it looks like to build in the gift economy instead of the market economy. It's slow, it's uncertain, but it's real. Last lesson, and this one's for those of you who are parents or who might be someday. You are always teaching an inheritance. The question is whether you're teaching it consciously or unconsciously. I unconsciously taught my son that worthiness is productivity. I did this by working constantly, by equating my value with my provision, by never letting him see me rest without guilt, by praising him for achievements more than for existence. I never said you're only valuable if you produce, but I lived it, and he learned it. Now he's teaching it to his kids. I watch my granddaughter already performing for approval, already anxious about grades at 6 years old, already learning that love is something you earn through excellence. The inheritance compounds, gets stronger each generation unless someone interrupts it. That's what the birthday confrontation was. An interruption, a painful, public, expensive interruption, but necessary, because the alternative was watching this poison pass to another generation and another until my great-great-grandchildren are calculating whether their elderly relatives have contributed enough to deserve basic dignity. Here's what I want you to hear. You can choose a different inheritance. You can be the generation that stops teaching that people are products. You can be the one who shows your kids that rest is sacred, that weakness is honest, that needing help is human, that old people and young people and disabled people and poor people all deserve seats at the table, not because they earned it, but because the table is big enough and we're all hungry. This doesn't mean you don't teach work ethic. It doesn't mean you don't teach responsibility. It means you teach that those things are tools for navigating the world, not measures of human worth. You teach, work hard so you can build things, not so you can deserve to exist. You teach, be responsible, because community depends on mutual care, not because you're only valuable when you're useful. You teach, contribute when you can, receive when you can't, and trust that over a lifetime, you'll do both many times. My son is learning this now. It's harder at 43 than it would have been at 13. Don't wait. Choose your inheritance today. I'm working on this with my granddaughter now. When she shows me her report card, I don't just praise the good grades. I ask her what she learned that surprised her, what she struggled with, what made her curious. I'm trying to teach her that learning is the point, not the performance. When she's having a hard day and everything feels like too much, I don't tell her to push through or work harder. I tell her that some days are hard and that's okay, and she's still completely worthy, even when she's struggling. I'm trying to interrupt the inheritance I passed to her father. It's a long game. I won't live to see if it works, but I'm planting seeds for a different kind of family tree, one where people are valued for existing, not for producing, where the table is always set and everyone eats, where grace is the default and transactions are the exception. That's the inheritance I'm choosing now. Better late than never. This practice is going to feel backwards, and that's the point. Usually, gratitude practice is about noticing what you've received, what others have given you. It's good, it counters entitlement. But if you're scarcity wounded, if you're the one carrying everything, that kind of gratitude can feel like another burden. Oh great, now I have to be grateful on top of exhausted. So try this instead. Practice gratitude for what you've been allowed to give. Thank your child for letting you feed them, clothe them, raise them. Not because they did you a favor, but because giving is a privilege and they had to receive for you to experience it. Thank your aging parent for letting you care for them, for trusting you with their vulnerability. Thank your struggling friend for giving you the opportunity to be generous, to be needed, to matter in their life. This reversal does something sneaky. It reminds you that giving isn't losing. It's participating in the gift economy. It's joining the flow. When my son was young and I was working 2 jobs to afford his college, I thought I was sacrificing. But I was also receiving the profound gift of being needed, of mattering completely to another human, of building something bigger than myself. I lost that perspective somewhere, got bitter about my giving. This practice brings it back. Try it this week. Write down 3 things you were allowed to give and feel the privilege of it. I started doing this every morning. Today, I was allowed to make breakfast for myself, which means I have food and the ability to prepare it. I was allowed to call my daughter and listen to her vent about her day, which means she trusts me with her real feelings. I was allowed to give my time to this video, to you, which means I have something worth sharing and you're willing to receive it. When you frame it this way, giving stops feeling like depletion and starts feeling like participation, like you're part of something bigger than yourself. Like your generosity is a gift. You're giving yourself as much as you're giving it to others. Final practice, and this one's a commitment. Make a dignity covenant with someone in your life. Explicit. Out loud. It goes like this. I commit to treating you as fully human and fully worthy, regardless of what you produce, provide, or perform, even when you're struggling, even when you're taking more than you're giving, even when you're inconvenient or expensive or failing. You get to be human with me, and that means you get dignity. Always. Then ask them to make the same covenant with you. This feels weird. We don't usually say this stuff explicitly. We assume it. But assumptions die under pressure. My son assumed I knew he loved me. I assumed he knew I deserved basic respect. Both assumptions shattered at that birthday table. Explicit covenants survive pressure. When the transactional thoughts come, and they will, you have something to return to, a promise you made when you were clearer. My son and I made this covenant at my kitchen table. Over breakfast, we wrote it down, we both signed it. It doesn't solve everything. He still feels the scarcity panic sometimes. I still feel the sting of humiliation. But we have the covenant, and when things get hard, we pull it out and read it. You are worthy because you exist, not because you produce. Make this covenant this week with your parent, your child, your partner, your friend. Say it out loud. Write it down if you need to. Let it be the foundation you return to when the transactional virus tries to recalculate someone's value. So let me bring us home. We started with me standing at a birthday table, denied food by my own son because I hadn't contributed financially. We watched me empty his bank accounts in response. It looked like revenge. It looked like cruelty. But here's what actually happened. We were both trapped in a transactional worldview that was killing our relationship, and it took a crisis to reveal it. It took humiliation and loss and confrontation to break us open to something different. My son learned that security isn't money in an account. It's knowing someone will feed you even when you haven't earned it. I learned that giving isn't about creating debt. It's about participating in a flow that's bigger and older and wiser than any individual transaction. We're rebuilding, not back to what we were, that was already broken, forward into something neither of us has language for yet. A relationship where we can both be weak sometimes, where we can both need without shame, where the table is set and everyone eats, not because they've earned their seat, but because they're family. It's fragile. Some days we slip back into scorekeeping. Some days the scarcity panic wins and we're both clutching our resources, terrified of loss. But we have the covenant now, we have the breakfast table practice, we have the memory of what happens when we reduce each other to economics and how empty it leaves us both. Here's what I want you to take from this. You're not broken because you've been keeping score. You're wounded by a culture that taught you that your worth is your productivity, by an economy that treats humans like resources, by a scarcity that feels so real it's hard to remember that people aren't the thing that runs out. You're not bad for wanting fairness. You're scared. Scared of being taken advantage of, scared of giving more than you have, scared of ending up like me, old, vulnerable, pushed away from the table. But fairness and love don't speak the same language, and you have to choose which economy you're building your most important relationships in. You can't choose the gift economy in all spaces. The market will eat you alive if you try. But in your family, in your closest relationships, you have to risk the imbalance. You have to give without measuring. You have to receive without earning, not because it's fair, because it's the only thing that keeps you human. Here's your mantra. Say it with me. I am worthy because I exist, not because I produce. My beloveds are worthy because they exist, not because they perform. We will eat together, struggle together, age together, and the worthiness never wavers. This is the table. This is the covenant. This is how we survive. Say that when the scarcity panic comes, but when you're tempted to calculate someone's value, when you're terrified you're not valuable anymore, you are, you always were. The metrics lied. If this resonated with you, if you're realizing you've been running transactional math on relationships that need gift logic, do me a favor, leave a comment. Tell me where you're keeping score. Tell me who you need to make a dignity covenant with. Tell me what inheritance you're choosing. I read them, not all of them, there's too many now, but enough. And your story might be the one that helps someone else recognize their own wound. If this helped you see something you couldn't see before, hit the like button, not for me, for the algorithm that will show this to someone else who's standing at a table, wondering why they don't get to eat. And subscribe if you want more of this, the messy, hard, real conversations about how we're all trying to stay human in a world that wants to turn us into transactions. I'm William, I'm 67. I humiliated my son by taking his security, and he humiliated me by denying my dignity, and we're both still here, still trying, still learning how to love without a ledger. You can do this too, I promise you can. The table is big enough, you just have to stop calculating who deserves a seat. I'll see you in the next one.